So my mother, who's now going on teaching for about 50 years, when she was starting out, she was 19 years old, living in Israel, and her first class that she was about to go teach was 7th grade boys, 40 of them, Navi. And that was her trial by fire, which, okay, you remember my mother, but she was fine with that. She had everything prepared, whatever it is. And she's about to walk into class, and the principal stops her. He's like, "Oh, I just need you to have the boys fill out these forms, with their mother's name, their father's name, yada, yada, So she's like, "Okay, before you start class, just hand them to me." So she hands out the forms, and the boys are very, studiously filling them out, and everything's fine. And one kid raises his hand and says, "I need another form, please." So she gives him another form. 2 minutes later, he raises his hand again. He's like, "I need another form." She's like, "Why?" So he said, "Because it says siblings, and there's only 6 lines, and I have more than 12 siblings." She's like, "All right." It was not quite as heard of as it is nowadays. She gives him another form. He raises his hand again, and now the whole class is laughing and thinking, wonderful, we have this whole class clown situation. She says, "What's going on?" He says, "My father has 4 wives." So of course the class erupts, in "What, are you a guy? Are you an Arab?" It's Israel, so of course, and he was also dark skinned, dark, more so than. And my mother realizes Navi class just went way out the window, and that's not happening. So she quickly shifts gears to teach them about Rabeinu Gershom. And she says to the boy, "Did you just come from Yemen?" And he says, "Yes." He had just come in on Operation Magic Carpet when the Israeli government had basically en masse flown the whole thing. Now Israel had a major problem because they did accept Rabeinu Gershom. The vast majority of Jews in Israel at the time had accepted it. But now they were flying in these groups of people who had not. And would they impose it on them? What about those that were already married to multiple women? And so in the courts, it was decided if you came in, polygamously with multiple wives, you may keep them, you may stay married to them. But at your point of entrance, you now are subject to Rabeinu Gershom, and you can no more. Stop right there. Yeah. So that was what they came out with. But this guy had come in with his 4 wives and his 20-something kids, and he was keeping them, And so my mother, taught the kids Rabeinu Gershom, and she included how you're not allowed to open someone else's letters. And in the Middle Ages, they would sign their letters with Beis Chet Daled Reish Gimel, which stands for Becherem de Rabeinu Gershom, to remind you, you can't open my letter without, So fine, class is over. She goes home. Not exactly the class she had in mind, but things happen. She comes back the next day. She's ready to start teaching, and she starts teaching. And right in front of her, these 2 kids. One of them takes out his notebook and very loudly rips out a piece of paper and scribbles something on it and folds it and writes on top Becherem de Rabeinu Gershom and passes it to his friend sitting right over there. So my mother is obviously very impressed that they took so much to heart the lesson, but not so impressed with the result. So she said to the boy, "Can I have the paper?" And he said, "You can have it, but you can't read it because I wrote Rabeinu Gershom on it. So there you go." So I was like, "Fine, I'm not going to read it. You're right. But let me have it anyway." So she takes it and she goes home and she calls Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was the Rav of the school at Takannah and a tremendous posek. And she says, I need to see you urgently. So he gets a call from a 19-year-old girl, what. So he says, "It's a school matter." She says, "Yes." He says, "Come on over." And she comes over, she tells him the whole story, and he laughs. It's funny. And he says, "Wait here. I need to convene my Beit Din." So she's waiting, and in walk 2 other rabbis, I don't remember who they were or if she ever, and he says to her, "Look, I can tell you that, I can kind of give you a head there and say, you're a teacher, you can open your kids' thing, but I want to teach your students that a chayron like this one from Rabeinu Gershom is not a small thing. We don't just arbitrarily or, seemingly arbitrarily say, it's fine because whatever, we like you or you're okay or you're a teacher. I'm going to convene my Beit Din and give you an official pass, so to speak, as a teacher. In your classroom, you may open, any letters or whatever. And he did that. He made an official document. He had it sealed by the Beit Din. My mother had it framed. She brought it to school the next day, hung it on, just so they could know that it was official.